Hey everyone, this is Anshu Jain and welcome to Fluxx Talks. And today I feel so thrilled because we've got something very exciting to talk about. Well, today we are joined by Raven Stoller, the founder and owner of Raven Invasive Plant Management LLC, a company dedicated to tackling invasive plants and protecting native ecosystems. And on today's show, we'll explore what invasive species actually means, why invasive plants are a serious problem for biodiversity and our environment. Hi, Raven.
Hi.
Before we proceed, I would want to say that you look phenomenal. Let's love it a bit. And what is the history behind, what is the secret behind this hat?
Well, I'm a hat person, so I'm rarely seen without a hat. And this particular hat came from a very famous music venue in Austin, Texas called Antone's. I walked into the door with one hat on. The guy selling hats said, "You need this hat." So I walked out with this one.
I must say that it really suits you and it's adding a lot of value today.
Thank you.
Well, now straight getting to the point here, we would want to understand that what invasive plants and invasive species actually mean and why are they so harmful for the environment?
Sure, that's a great question. I think a lot of people don't realize that plants can be invasive. And basically what that means is when organisms, in this case plants, are moved from somewhere else in the world to a place they didn't come from, they can cause a lot of problems in ecosystems. And primarily, these plants have no natural predators. So if you're kudzu in Asia, you probably have, koala bears eating it or, natural predators that will come in and keep a plant in check. But when they're moved somewhere and they don't have natural predators, they tend to create monocultures and they can outcompete the native plants that are super, super important.
But I've got a question here. If I'm not mistaken, not all non-native plants are known as invasive.
That is correct.
Correct?
That's correct.
There's only the ones that are harmful. And they are the ones who are actually creating a bit of ruckus around, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, when they spread in a way, they just try to occupy anywhere in any position wherever they find an opportunity. But how do they basically spread?
They actually spread in a lot of different ways. They can be moved by people. For instance, a plant that we deal with a lot is Japanese stilt grass. And this plant was used as packing material for pottery that was brought to the United States. And when it was thrown out behind a building, it had seeds in it. So that plant, just took hold and started being spread from one place to another. Wildlife can spread the seeds of invasive plants. So if they eat a berry on a plant that contains the seeds, they fly somewhere else. We could have that plant there. They can be moved by things like wind, water, so the natural environment. But perhaps most troubling to me is the fact that these invasive plants can be moved unknowingly by things like equipment. So if we bring an excavator or a mower, onto our land and those the equipment has gone through invasive plants, they could get that material caught up, right, in their tracks or wheels or whatever. And then they move to another site and they can actually spread those invasive plants there.
True that. I mean, they don't just follow the entire cycle of growth, but apart from that, they can expand and grow and can be transferred through the means that humans follow. But one of the most important points that I believe people need to understand here is invasive plants, when they grow, they're actually hampering and disturbing the complete cycle of the native plants, which are actually beneficial for us, correct?
They are highly, highly beneficial. In fact, native plants and their native environment, of course, provide very important resources for all of us. First of all, the wildlife there have evolved over time to rely on these plants. So animals, right? Birds, mammals, insects, right? They have grown up in a world where they were using these native plants as food and habitat. So when we have invasive plants from halfway around the world that come in and outcompete those native plants, they're actually destroying the habitat, very important food and habitat for wildlife.
Exactly, and that is what is completely disturbing, not just the environment, but the biodiversity as well. So basically, they are occupying the space, they are occupying the region where the native plants are supposed to grow and provide us with all the facilities. Now, here, I would want to highlight one of the most important mountains where you actually started your business. I'm talking about Appalachian Mountain. What's so special about it?
Oh my gosh, what is so special about it? For one thing, the energy of the place. When I first visited the Appalachian Mountains, I really can't explain the feelings that I had, but it was something like knowing that I was home. It felt very natural, and I I didn't learn until honestly after I started doing this work how special the Appalachian Mountains are. Where we live is actually one of the most biologically diverse places in the entire world in terms of the native plant population. So there are approximately 2,500 species of native plants in that area, and many of them grow and flower in the shade, right? So in forested areas, so we're in the mountains. So the native plant population is very, very special there. And also, again, the wildlife, that depend on those plants. We have some of the highest populations of salamanders in the world. We have an amazing aquatic creature called a hellbender that looks prehistoric, and it doesn't live in many places in the world. So we have this amazing plant population. We have an amazing population of different kinds of wildlife that rely, on those plants. And then the people. I mean, it's also a very rugged place in the world, with those mountains. And another threat posed by the invasive plants is when they outcompete the native plants that are supposed to be there, we actually have changes in the way that the land, right? The land and water move and function.
Very true.
And that can create big problems. We had Hurricane Helene come through the area that I live over a year ago. And the fact that we had areas that were covered with invasive plants, they had lost the native plants that would keep the soil in place. And, when those plants are gone, trees are gone because we've lost them due to plants like kudzu. So we end up having much bigger issues when we're not protecting the biodiversity and the ecology of a region as it should. Of course,
I guess the entire cycle gets disturbed. It's not just about the plants, and it's not just about the wildlife, it is about the human cycle as well. So the entire cycle of the nature, it gets impacted. All right, I want to get a bit personal here.
Sure.
What got you into this?
Well, I've had a long work life, and I've done a lot of different things in my life. And I was really struggling to find something I was passionate about. So I had come to a point in my life that I was making big changes. My marriage had ended. I was trying to reinvent myself. And it was really the plants that brought me to this work. And I know that 100%. They brought me to the area, to the Appalachian Mountains that I live now. I understand that the trees and the native plants were calling to me. They needed me there, defending them and doing this work. And it was really not a business I intended to start. I was seeing, I'm a big observer, just seeing the threats of these plants in the neighborhoods that I lived in. And I decided to just basically educate people and try to raise the level of knowledge about these plants and what they do. And inadvertently, when I put a post on a neighborhood website, many people contacted me and said, well, you can come pull English ivy in my yard. That was actually the plant that got me started. And so I started doing that on the side.
Wow.
And it's been 6.5 years now. We have over 500 clients. I work for Land Trust. The Nature Conservancy is one of my clients, mostly individual landowners. And people see the need for what we do. And it was really just the culmination of passion and purpose coming together. I know now that this is my soul's work.
So that was your path to discovery.
It's what I'm
anyway,
here
they said
for.
that the moment you get close to the nature, you discover yourself.
So
I guess you're the live example of the same, right? 100%. And how's the life in the mountains?
Yeah.
I would want to know about your life in the mountains.
It's lovely. I spend as much time as I can on the land, which is why I feel like this work that I do is really a gift. Every day that I get to go out in the community and walk through people's land, walk in the woods, talk about the plants, talk about the soil, all of those things. I'm like, wow. This is work. I get paid. I get paid to do this, and people show their gratitude,
That's true.
For me just showing up in the world and being passionate about the land and my connection to it. So I also like to garden. We grow a lot of food. We're always trying to basically just increase the biodiversity on our land. We're on basically old pasture land. So animals were compacting the soil. All of the trees had been removed. So we actively plant trees, native shrubs, native perennials, and watching the response in terms of wildlife and how the birds come, the insects come, all of those things, just being able to be in one of the most biologically diverse places in the world, being able to support that biodiversity with my work and then see, the fruits of my labor and how nature responds is incredibly satisfying.
I'm pretty sure of the same. And it reflects in your personality, the vibrancy. It feels as if, yes, nature, has blessed you with all possible features or facets that is needed. And it's completely evident. Congratulations on the phenomenal work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Great. Now, coming to the technicalities, of your work, what are the kind of plants that you work with?
Sure. So we deal mostly with the woody vines, shrubs, some grasses and trees that are threats to the southern forest, right? The Appalachian Mountains where I live. It's a long list of plants. The thing about where we live is that it's very similar to areas of Asia, so China and Japan specifically, where many of the plants that we deal with come from. So they're moved halfway around the world. They don't have those natural predators, but they have, the beauty of seasons. I live in a temperate rainforest. So, we get a good amount of rain. So we're mostly dealing with those plants that you can observe their bad habits, right? When you see a vine this big wrapping around a tree, right, girdling that tree and literally strangling the life out of it, anyone can see that is a problem, right? It doesn't take much if you use your powers of observation, right, to see what is happening with these plants. So yeah, we're dealing with shrubs, big vines. I mean, vines as big as my leg, trees. And the best part for me and for nature is that we're using tools, not chemicals.
Right. So completely the way you identify the invasive plants is based on observation.
Yes. So, we have certainly a body of research in terms of invasive plants and which plants are considered invasive in the area that we live in. Living in the southeast of the United States, we're a hotbed, for the reasons that I said, temperate climate, we get a lot of rain. So we deal with many, or I would even say most of the invasive plants that are threats in the United States. Will try to take a foothold in the southeast. So
you're doing a lot to protect the biodiversity.
Yeah,
that's for
a lot.
Sure.
Yeah, it's hard work too. That's the thing.
I do understand that you're able to identify the plants. I do understand that you're catering to the subject matter, but what happens to the plant material afterward?
That's a great question. So as much as we can, we prefer to leave that plant material on site. Those plants, by virtue of growing there, have taken nutrients from the soil. They have nutrients within them, right? Just by virtue of being plants. All plants are beneficial, right? All of them. They just need to be in the right place. So the plants that are not allelopathic, which is basically poisonous, right? We like to leave those plants on site to break down. I do have a couple of green waste shredders that are made in Belgium that can make quick work of kind of shredding up that plant material and putting it into a finer, material that can then break down and feed the soil. So increasing the biodiversity of the soil, helping our soil be healthy is another big focus of my business. So where we can, we want to leave it on site. And when we can't, we'll transport it. There's some material that we only transport to the local landfill, and that would be like the most egregious of the invasive plants that we deal with, which is probably Japanese knotweed. It can spread by any tiny little part of that plant. It's also allelopathic, so that's not the kind of material we'd want to leave lying around on someone's property.
So we just try to utilize it to the maximum possible capacity. The moment we feel that no, this might be hazardous, we just try to transport that.
That's right.
Correct. Now, you're an expert. You already are aware of the complete system, and you can clearly observe the researchers, the team of members are working with you who can identify that which plant is the native one and which is the invasive one. But how about a normal person? At times at our homes, in our surroundings, we try to grow a lot of plants. Then how do we understand that which one is invasive, organically, which are growing, and which one is a native one?
That's a great question as well. And I say first, we all have a responsibility as a landowner to know the place that we live. And if we know the place that we live, I believe it's the only way that we can love anything, right, is to know it. So I believe we have a responsibility when we are stewards of land. I don't really believe in this concept of ownership. We're never going to own that land. It's going to be here long after we are. But while we're stewarding that land, we have a responsibility to get to know it. So I encourage anyone who buys land to learn the plants that are there. And I do a lot of educating people. So a lot of public speaking, write articles, just talk as much as I can to people, talk to kids in schools, and really encourage people to observe. I like to go back to observation. And you can see when plants tend to be invasive, but that's not always true. If you go to your local garden center and you just buy something because it has pretty berries on it and you don't know anything about it, and you bring it onto your land, you don't know anything about that land where you live, then you could very well be bringing invasive plants in. And that, of course, is one of the top ways that these plants are spread because they're still knowingly sold. So I encourage anyone, get to know the place you live, get to know the plants. If you're going to buy a plant, just, take a photo of it on your phone. Make sure it's not invasive to the place that you live.
AI has made our lives anyway much, much more easier. So it is not just about being interested in planting trees or these things at our home. It is equally important to have the proper information, knowledge of what you are getting into, so that you're able to protect not just your area, but the entire environment in one or the other way. And that's the way of supporting our biodiversity as well. All right. Now, where can people get more information about it?
There are so many resources online. My website is, of course, a resource. I put as much information as I can on my website. It's RavenNC, as in North Carolina.com. And there I've gathered resources internationally. Invasive Species Center in Canada is a fantastic resource. The University of Georgia has an invasive species center that also puts out great information. So you can find a lot of good information out there. The challenge is that much of the information about handling invasive species is put out by giant land managers who manage hundreds of thousands or millions of acres. And giant land managers say, Raven, we can't do what you do, putting crews of people on the ground with tools because we have too much land. And to them, I say repeatedly, you are doing us a disservice if you don't help people realize that there are other ways to do it. Because in the United States, the private landowners collectively, we own more land in the United States than all of the giant land managers combined. That's the Forest Service, the BLM, USDA, the Park Service. We own more land than they do. So when they're putting out information that says, yes, you have English ivy, spray it with chemicals, that's where they're doing us a disservice. Because if you only have a quarter of an acre or 3 or Makes 10 sense. Or whatever, we can do this work without chemicals. That's so true. While you'll find a lot of information online about managing invasive plants, I encourage everyone to stop and think about, how can I do this differently?
Definitely. It is not just about managing your own land. As I mentioned just some time back, and with the stats and figures that you just mentioned right now, it is also about supporting and protecting the environment that has given you so very much. And every single person contributing is not just helping himself or herself, but then eventually the entire human ecosystem right here. All right. Now, I'm just moving a bit away from the subject, and this leads to the final question of the day. Well, we have spoken so much about invasive plants and why it is important to protect the native ecosystem. How do we help remove those habits which are basically invading our lifestyle today? Do you have got something to say about it? Because I know that you have seen so much in life, you have done so much in life, and you have got such a terrific journey and life experience. What message would you like to give to all the wonderful people who connected with us at the moment?
More than anything, connecting with the earth, connecting with nature. It is, all life on this planet comes from the earth. We feel like as human beings, we control the planet, that we are the highest of the hierarchy, and that could not be farther from the truth. I find that all of the problems that we face as human beings, if you want to look at social injustice, like what I encourage you to look at any problem we are having as human beings. I believe that they stem from us distancing ourselves from the planet, from the Mother Earth. So I encourage people to go outside, walk in the woods, sit in the grass, not turf grass. It's not so good for us. But, take a walk in the woods, like hear the birds sing, touch a flower, all those things. The closer we get to the earth and to nature, the more we are able to see the impacts of our actions and others on the planet.
Beautifully said. If you want to know or learn about the path to self-discovery, go closer to the nature. And it is very well said. And certainly it will help you get rid of all those lifestyle and habits, which is basically invading your good life. Thank you so very much, Raven. It has been such a great experience speaking with you, and we just can't wait for you to get back to our show. And yes, absolutely looking forward to all the traits that you have mentioned here and help Mother Earth, nature, grow, develop, and prosper the way it has supported us all our lives. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And to all you wonderful people who are connected with us at the moment, don't forget to follow us on our social media handles, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook, Fluxx Talks. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Fluxx Talks. See you there. Thank you. This is Anshu Jain signing off.